Hi, and thank you for joining me for a short lecture. I just had a discussion with someone on Facebook on the importance of midrashim and agadot. In other words, legends and tales that appear in rabbinic literature, and their importance, ultimately the weight they carry or should carry in the theological Jewish world. And I know that depending on who you ask, you will notice the perspectives changing. But friends, my opinion, and I believe the opinion of Torah and authentic Judaism, is that midrashim and agadot, cultural folk tales and legends, carry no weight in Judaism, none at all. Not to mention that this was the same opinion held by many rabbis throughout the centuries. I mean, just look at the Ibn Ezra and what he does with many midrashim, or what the son of the Rambam wrote in the Hakdama to Ein Yaakov. And I don't expect you to believe me just because I'm saying it. Like with anything I say or anyone else says around you regarding religion, or in this case Judaism, you must ask for proof. And in Judaism, proof always comes from Torah. So your first question should be, where in Torah does it tell us we have to adhere to, believe in, or listen to legends and tales uttered by rabbis? And the short answer is nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Now, as you know, I'm not a Karaite Jew. I'm a rabbinic Jew. I believe in the oral law, in halakha. And as you also know, that the reason I believe in this and teach it, and the only reason you should as well, is because the Torah itself commands us to adhere to it. Where? In Parashat Shoftim, in Deuteronomy chapter 17, and many other parashiot. The mitzvah is called the mitzvah of lo tasur, the mitzvah of not straying from the rulings of this great court, the great court that eventually became known as the Sanhedrin. Now, this commandment does not include legends and tales, but laws, practical laws at that. So in case you thought that modern-day Judaism has strayed away from its roots, which is Torah, which is the Karaite argument, think again, because Judaism, Torah Judaism, is nothing more than Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, and halakha, which are the rulings of the great court. So we don't need rabbis to tell us that midrashim and agadot are not authoritative. We know they're not authoritative. Why? Because if they would have been, the Torah would have told us so. Especially when the vast majority of these midrashim add to the narrative of the Torah. They take the plain meaning and twist it in such a fashion that it ultimately ends up rewriting Torah. Which is why I cringe every time I hear a rabbi teach Torah Judaism and say things like, Judaism teaches, and then utter some ridiculous midrash or agadah, legend or tale. That's not what Torah teaches. That is not what Judaism teaches. Judaism is just Torah and halacha. And really, any other opinion or veneration of tales uttered by our rabbis or our sages is just another form of rabbi worship. Assuming because a rabbi may have said something, it must be right or be relevant. Now again, like we said, the rulings of the great court, the members of the Sanhedrin, who we call Chazal, their rulings are relevant, but not their personal opinions or personal interpretations built off of their own ideas and their own prejudices. And no one would even say that their rulings were error-free also, which is why Masechet Harayot and Chilchot Shegagot exists, that depicts the errors of the great court. But even with errors, the Torah still commands us to obey. Not to mention that these midrashim are 9 out of 10 times not related to the story at hand, or to the words or the grammar found in the pasuk. They create a new narrative that many times paints a completely different, hateful picture of not just the outside world, but of the intentions and actions of biblical characters themselves. How does that now fall into the Averah of Baal Tosif, of not adding to the Torah? It appears twice in the Chumash, Lo tosef alav velo tigra mimenu, that we shouldn't add or subtract from it, which is really the whole reason for codification in the first place. For works like Mishneh Torah, Shulchan Aruch, or even the abridgment of halakha made by the Rif. All this was in order to muzzle Chazal. In other words, to separate what was binding, what was obligatory, from what was ultimately disposable. Which is why even the Rambam in his Hakdama to the Mishneh Torah writes that once you have a copy of his codification, you don't need to study Gemara anymore. Why? Because of all these stories that ultimately end up hurting more than helping. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm for people studying Gemara, but only when they're able to distinguish between Agadah and Halakha. And I hear countless times how people say that we need this Midrashim to understand Halakha, or Chas v'Shalom to understand Torah itself. But the funny thing is that they never give an example, because there aren't any. Because, friends, the truth is that if you need an exterior work, or set of stories, to help you understand the book that was given to us to civilize humanity, friends, that does not speak well for the book or Hashem, its author. And if that was also the case, how would that ever stop someone from changing Judaism within the guise of justifying certain new values found in Midrashim, or supposedly found within them? Do you understand that virtually every reason given for the insularity that religious Jews harbor and the indifference they show towards the outside world is never built on Torah. Never. But only on Midrash and Agadah. Can you imagine it? The people that were equipped with the tools to better this world choose to instead allow other works to decide how they interact with that outside world. And I don't have to tell you that it has ultimately hurt us more than helped us. Speaking about Midrashim and Agadot. Not to mention that the authors of these legends and tales were either themselves or the students of the rabbis who lived during the Khurban, during the destruction of the temple. Individuals who also had a share or a stake in what transpired. So how could their personal opinions be deified now as something useful? In other words, we're still in exile now. We're still in Galut, telling us that we're still doing something wrong. And friends, don't fool yourself. This is why the Karaite movement is growing and why they accuse us of worshiping the rabbis. Because we make no distinction between Torah and personal opinion, which, if you really think about it, is what gave birth to Christianity and many other offshoot groups in Judaism. Groups that took Midrashim literally. And it's exactly what fuels modern-day Jewish sects. But then, of course, the rabbis say, oh, but you're not supposed to take it literally. And when you do, you're deemed a heretic or put outside of the community. Tell that to every Lubavitcher and Christian who can justify, through Midrashim, that the Messiah could die and come back again. Or Shabtai Tzvi, or the creation and adherence to the Zohar, which is pretty much nothing more than a book of Midrashim that have been deified. And friends, I'm just really trying to teach authentic Judaism here. And it's a shame that my biggest adversaries in this area are individuals who claim to believe and teach the same as I do. In other words, it's not just Hasidim and Mekubalim I have to deal with, but individuals so infatuated with Jewish culture and ethnicity that become theologically handicapped through these ideas from seeing the bigger picture and the bigger goal, which is the dissemination of Torah Judaism in the most practical and effective way possible. Friends, for more information on everything Jewish, please visit TorahJudaism.org. Thank you.